Well, good morning, everyone. I see lots of smiles on everyone's faces. There's smiles on our faces also because early voting has started today. And it started on time. And I'll try and speak above that noise that we hear up there. But when you think about where we were 2.5 weeks ago, for us it's also a double celebration. Because so many people said, what's going to happen? There's no way you'll have elections starting in Georgia on time. And in spite of all that, today early voting has started, all 159 counties. What's really interesting, we like to deal with facts, so here's some facts for you. Write down right now. At 10:29 a.m. this morning, we already had 71,054 people vote early today. It looks like this is going to be a record breaker for the first day of early voting. But we don't make predictions. We let the voters decide. But it looks like we're going to have strong early voting today. Our motto has been very simple. Every vote matters because every voter matters. We've been working overtime to be prepared for this time for the last 2 years since we had the last statewide election in 2022. The county's been working hard. Every day we put our shoulder to the wheel and got it done. Last week, the absentee ballots went out as scheduled. And to the credit of the United States Postal Service, they stepped up and they picked up the voter-requested absentee ballots, and voters have begun to send them back in. I spoke yesterday afternoon, and that fellow there had gotten his absentee ballots. And so it's great to see that working so well. I do want to remind every Georgian that absentee ballots are sent out only to a voter after they provide voter ID, which primarily is going to mean your driver's license number. But no matter how you vote in Georgia, absentee, early, or election day, we require voter ID, and in Georgia, over 99% of voters use photo ID for their identification. So far, we have seen just over 250,000 voters request absentee ballots. Perhaps in the next week or so, we'll see that rise up to 300,000. And that, we think, will probably look like about 5 to 6% of all voters will be voting absentee this cycle. And that appears that this will be quite similar to 2022, 2018, and the earlier years. For all the people who love election data, statistics, and numbers, you can Google Election Data Hub Georgia, and it'll take you directly to data that is ongoing and updated continuously. I can't overstate enough the dedicated commitment of our Secretary of State Elections team. That's headed by Blake Evans, who will speak here shortly, and also our county election directors. It was a total team effort, and Governor Kemp and GEMA, the Georgia Emergency Management Agency, deserve high marks for their ready assistance whenever we needed quick solutions. We put our heads down, we did our job, and that's what people expect of us. A few counties have had to adjust a few handfuls of early voting locations because of these changes. Those changes are going to be shown on MVP My Voter page, and the local election officials will be using local and social media to get that out to their local communities. To Georgia voters, please make a plan on how you want to vote. If you want to vote absentee, make that decision today and get your request in. If you're going to vote early, take a look at your calendar and decide when you're going to vote early. And if you're going to vote on election day, decide what time. It's your choice, but please make a choice and figure out what your plan will be. If you're planning to vote absentee, we have a new program. It's an app. It's called Ballot Scout, which will allow you to track your absentee ballot through that process. It'll allow you to see where you are in the application phase. Has the ballot been mailed back to you? When you mail it back, has it been received? And then has it been accepted? That'll give you peace of mind, and you could do that with Ballot Scout. It's a free app for everyone. I think what I really want to let you know is we have a great story to tell here in Georgia. I'm proud of what we have accomplished this past 6 years. We now have top ratings by both organizations from the hard right but also right down the center from the National Bipartisan Policy Center. They recognize us number one for election integrity. Everything that we have done since 2019 has to improve the process, to build trust, and build your confidence in the election cycle. Here's a few of them. Making sure that only American citizens vote in our elections. We did that by going back to our voter rolls and verifying that only American citizens were on the voter list. We did that over 20 months ago, long before anyone else was ever talking about it. This office was the first office in the country to do an audit of our voter rolls so we could verify to our fellow Georgians that only American citizens are on the voter rolls. The reason that it works so well is because we partner with the Department of Driver Services and they do a robust citizenship verification. And we think that's really important. In fact, it's been polled and over 80% of all Americans believe that only American citizens should vote in our elections. We've outlawed ballot harvesting. We now have a verifiable paper ballot. So you, the voter, get to see who you voted for. And then afterwards, when we want to do an audit, you have a piece of paper that we can audit, reading the human readable text. This election, in addition to having security fibers on the paper, and you can put a special light on, we have the state seal on there, so every ballot will be watermarked. Absentee early election day. That's official ballot paper. That's not something you run down to the office, supply store and buy. We think that gives voters confidence about that. We have the cleanest, most accurate voter list in the entire country. That's a bold statement. And how can I say that? Because we do several things that other states don't do. Number one, we are part of a multi-state organization with 25 other states. So in other words, a state like Utah, if you move there and register to vote there, they tell us immediately and we can take you off the voter list. That's really important. Number two, there was a lot of misinformation, disinformation about that multi-state organization. And most of the Republican states got out, but we stayed in Kentucky and Utah. We stayed in with the other states that stayed in. But then we did bilaterals, and we did bilateral agreements with Alabama, South Carolina, Virginia, and Florida. We'll do bilaterals with any state that's not part of that. So if you move to Alabama and register to vote, we'll find out about that quickly to keep clean voter rolls. The other thing is, we're really grateful for this. I think it really helps that the current governor is a former Secretary of State. Maybe that helped, but we now have access, and we've partnered with the Department of Driver Services. So if you ever move and get a driver's license in any of the other 49 states, plus the District of Columbia, we'll find out about it. Because of federal law, we just can't pull you off. We go through security protocols. We actually send you a note, a letter. Dear sir, madam, we've noticed that you got a driver's license here in North Dakota. Have you moved there? Hopefully they respond. Then we can take them off the voter rolls immediately. If they don't, then we'll have to just put them in that pile and wait till they've seasoned out because of federal law. But it helps us identify voters. We're getting monthly death records. Everything we've done is to make sure we have very clean voter list because we understand how many people move each year throughout America. They say 11% do. So it's a lot to keep track of. That builds voter confidence in the whole process. Equipment testing, we did 159 counties before the presidential primary with health checks to verify that the equipment is accurately recording every single vote that voters cast. We've done about 20, since that time, and I've been on many of those visits throughout the entire state. But we did that. But even more important, every county checks every piece of equipment that goes out to the precincts with logic and accuracy testing before the election. Then for the very first time in America, we started doing parallel monitoring during the presidential primary. We did that for the general primary. We're going to be doing it for this election. Pulling out a piece of equipment, a random audit on election day, bringing it to headquarters, and then verifying that it's still recording the votes accurately, that it's not been hacked by some bad actor out there. We know there's plenty of bad actors out there. And then audits. We started doing risk limiting audits back in 2020. If you think about the presidential race, instead of just doing a 90% risk limiting audit, because there's so many questions raised, we actually did a 100% hand retally of all 5 million ballots. Many people aren't aware of that. Reading the human readable text. Well, we've upped our game. This year, because we have all the ballot images of, let's say, 5 million ballots that will be cast, we'll have those ballot images. We have partnered with a tech company, and we're going to be able to actually audit every single race, all 5 million ballots, based on the human readable text, not the QR code. From the president right on down to the local county commissioner, or in Fulton County, could be your county surveyor. But every single race will have a 100% audit. We think that's tremendous. That builds trust. We think it's really important to build trust. But you know, I think that elections should be fun again. And so we've been working on that. We want to make sure that lines are shorter than an hour. And on election day, they have been. We want to make sure that they're less than an hour, but we loved when we had in 2022, the average wait time was less than 3 minutes. Got down as low as 2 minutes at times. This morning, there appeared to be no slowdowns, and lines have been moving, and everyone's been less than that. Then we also look at our electronic poll pads. We're getting people checked in less than 3 minutes. And Blake has some up-to-date data on how fast it's going today. We think it's great. We've watched what Chick-fil-A has done over the years and how they've managed their lines, and we think that someone needed to do that in the election space, and that's what our focus has been. Why can't we have fun? Why can't we have short lines? Because I know at the end of the day, half of you are going to like these results and the other half aren't. But let's enjoy the process. So it's going to be free, it's going to be fair, and it's going to be fast. And we think that's really important. Everything that we have done in the last 6 years has been for the voters, so that they have results that they can trust. We're dedicated to serve the people of Georgia. And I'd like to bring up Blake, if you want to say a few questions, provide a few pieces of information. Blake Evans, our State Election Director.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, everybody. First and foremost, I want to echo what the Secretary said as far as our gratitude towards county election officials and the work that they've put in, especially in the last 3 weeks recovering from the hurricane and making sure that absentee ballots went out on time, which they did, and making sure that all advanced voting locations opened up on time, which they did this morning. And so we're very, very appreciative of the hard work that they did, working through in some cases, but especially between Valdosta and Richmond, some personal hardships that they were going through. So very, very grateful for them. And so just a few data points that I want to go through, and then we'll open it up for questions. But as the Secretary said, as of about 10 minutes ago, we were sitting at about 72,000 check-ins so far today. Just for a little bit of context, in 2020, on the first day in total, we hit about 136,000 check-ins. So we are already past the halfway point compared to the first day in 2020. And in 2022, in that general election, we hit 134,000. So again, already past the halfway point there. I also want to provide a little bit of context around the significant upgrades in technology that help make it possible to shorten those wait times and make sure that we're getting people through and keeping our lines like Chick-fil-A. But over the past 4 years, we have worked with county election officials and implemented upgrades such as our electronic poll books, and the check-in times for those are 57 seconds on average right now across the state. Also, we have a new voter registration system that's been in place for a couple of years at this point. And these fast check-in times and this throughput during early voting would not be possible without that upgrade to a new voter registration system. And that's a testament, again, to the Secretary's leadership and to the team that we have also in the Elections Division that I'm very grateful to work alongside of every day. And so, as I said, right now the average check-in time for a single voter is 57 seconds per check-in. I've been in contact this morning with many election officials around the state, and overall things are going really, really well. I was speaking to a couple of the election directors in the metro counties, and they're reporting little to no waits. I will say they do have, especially in the metro counties, some websites where you can go and you can see wait times if you are in that area. Also, I want to reiterate the My Voter page is where voters can go and get a lot of great information, especially information regarding early voting locations. That's mvp.sos.ga.gov. They can scroll down the page and click early voting locations and see the early voting locations for their county. We have in the entire state about 350 early voting locations that are going to be open across 3 weeks. Keep in mind that some of those locations will open the third week because we have a lot of counties that will start with a certain number of locations and then add on as early voting continues. We have one of the longest periods for early voting, in-person early voting in the country. And so for all those locations, all those wait times, all those dates, voters can go to My Voter page. That's mvp.sos.ga.gov. We have conducted over the last 4 years a lot of list maintenance. As the Secretary said, you can go to our data hub. You can see our current information for active voters that are eligible, active and inactive voters that are eligible for this election. Right now we're sitting at just under 7.2 million active voters in our state. And so that's some data that I want to provide. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Gabriel Sterling for questions and any comments that he has.
Thanks, Blake. Thanks, Secretary. Biggest thing is it's looking like we're setting up for a blowout day. We try not to make predictions like the Secretary said, but it's a really big day of early voting so far, and that's going to help us throughout the rest of the process and keep the election day line shorter, which is better for everybody, and we want everybody to have a great voting experience. We'll keep it easy. What do you got? We only have a couple of counties left that 4 counties were affected by the hurricane. 2 of them have already found new locations. The other 2 are still working on finding locations, but you can go to our disaster recovery site at sos.ga.gov to see if any of your local areas have been affected.
Our reaction is that we've always believed that everyone should follow the law and follow the Constitution. That's an American value. And so I think that's very important that that is affirmed, in the judicial system. And we'll make sure that we follow the law and follow the Constitution in everything we do. Thank you.
There were some issues with a couple of encoder cards. It seems to be isolated to just a couple of, we don't know the reason for it yet. It's isolated just to those. And if you go to the Cobb County website, there's a wait time app where if there's a line at one location, you can go to another location in the county and vote. But these are, it's the first day. You're going to run into some of those things sometimes. And once we figure out what happened, we will let you all know. It did not stop voting, by the way. They followed their rules. Archith. Well, I think the Secretary covered that with all the stuff we've done the last 2 years and the last 4 years to shore up our systems and our confidence and making the laws even better. And Blake's team and the counties, we test the machines beforehand, we test during, and we have audits afterwards. After all those things, then we have a new audit tool. We feel like we've done everything we can to be transparent and show the people, no matter who wins, as the Secretary often says, that's up to the voters. We're here just to report the final results. Yes, sir. I have no specific update for that, but we can get back to you later today on it. Yes, sir. Well, I know the situation was, that's not exactly a true statement. We can follow up with that after the fact. Yes, sir. Well, the biggest situation on this is a rule is not a rule until it's actually a rule, and courts of competent jurisdiction have not made decisions on those. We can't use precious time and resources on something that may not happen when we're dealing with actual situations like hurricanes and voting and absentee ballots. So for right now, until the courts rule, we're sort of in a holding pattern for any of those new rules. Anybody else over there? No? Yes, ma'am. We always hope for high turnouts. That's a big thing, but a little early to say it's going to be a record, but we're giving everybody every option they can to vote. And with that, we thank you all very much.
Thank you.